What's up? We are here with Shawn and Corey today, and we just wanted to bring together a discussion around community building. And Corey, man, I gotta say, dude, like I've watched you for years on how well you've built this amazing online cohesive ecosystem between the podcast that you host, your community, and your business. And I actually I've looked at every little component of that, and I can see that everything sort of feeds into each other. So I know none of this is by accident, and I know that you do this for your clients. And I'm curious, what was the moment or the insight that you had that made you realize that you needed to align all of these together, community, podcast, and the business?
Yeah, I would say like most things in life, it comes from a place of pain. I think that I talk predominantly to like business owners and entrepreneurs, and that's really my community. And I can say without question is like a lack of congruency is one of the biggest pain points that I think most business owners deal with. And it's because we all kind of have like shiny object, or I like to call it shiny outcome syndrome, is like you want the dream of all the other business owners that you look to and aspire to be. And then you try to do that thing. And then the next shiny thing comes along. And then the next shiny thing comes along. And you wonder why you never end up where you want to be. And so for me, it was just a big part of, more than anything, learning how to say no. Because there will always be another sexy opportunity around the corner. Honestly, it really started from just kind of scratching my own itch. So I come from the healthcare industry. I used to work as an occupational therapist. And through practicing as a practitioner, I realized that I actually suck at patient care. I'm terrible at it. So don't ever hire me for your patient care. But I realized is I'm really good at the other side of the industry in terms of like marketing, branding, business, community building, all the aspects that go into that. And yeah, it was a matter of like scratching my own itch of, okay, I need to somehow make a living. I don't want to be a practitioner anymore. How do I do this? And that's really where a lot of it was birthed from, is like starting a podcast show was kind of the first step of most of it. And it was just talking to other people that I aspired to be, other health related business owners and entrepreneurs. And for me, it was just an opportunity to invite somebody onto a quote unquote podcast show that I actually at the beginning had no interest in even publishing. It was literally just like a segue to meet interesting people. And it for sure worked, almost to the point where like too good, where I was getting so many inquiries that people wanted to be on the show that I would say yes to everything. And honestly, a number of those episodes never got published because they were just bad. They were just so bad. It's just like it wasn't even worth putting onto the internet. And so yeah, it really started to scratch my own itch talking to these entrepreneurs. And then the community didn't actually happen until I moved to Austin. At the time, I just left my practice as an occupational therapist, and I was doing a bit of traveling. I went to Denver and Florida and kind of bopping around. And when I ended up in Austin, it was the first place I ever, I guess, lived or stayed that felt like there was already a real sense of community. Everywhere else, I grew up in Minnesota, and everywhere else that I stayed, it's like everyone was very cliquey and they were kind of in their pockets and they were kind of doing their own thing. And when I got to Austin, I'll never forget, I had just gotten in town. It was right near around Christmas time. And this girl I'd never met before in my life, she invited me to a Christmas honky tonk party. And it's as odd as you can imagine. And there was drugs there, as you can imagine. And I go to this party with these random group of people I'd never met, but they were all just like super friendly and kind. They wanted to connect. And one of the guys that I met with was like, hey, here's my number. I host another community. You should come check it out. And everyone was just very open and kind and willing to put themselves out there and to make new connections. And that's where things kind of click for me, is like, oh, this community thing can be actually kind of fun. And I'd never experienced that before. To be honest, I even tried to build a bit of community when I was living up in Minnesota, and it flopped. Like people didn't show up, or people would never show up again. And it was very cliquey, and it was hard to meet people, or it was hard to get the word out. And everyone just kind of stayed in their bubble. And everyone talks about like Minnesota nice or Midwest nice. It's actually, in my opinion, Midwest passive aggressive, to be honest, is like they'll be nice to your face, but never actually in person. And so coming to Austin is like really where that start for actually building the same group of people that I was already interviewing on the podcast show, Health Related Business Owners, was the exact same people that I started building community with here in Austin. And then that sprung into providing services for them. And that's really what I do now, is from a business standpoint, and have been doing for the last like 5 years, is essentially marketing for health related business owners and entrepreneurs. And so, yeah, it's been a 4 or 5 year progress and progression to kind of getting where I'm at. So like although you said like I had this like master plan, in no way, shape, or form did I have any idea what I was doing. It was just kind of like one thing added onto the next thing, onto the next thing, and now here we are. So yeah.
Can you give us just an idea of what the community looks like? Like, I think a lot of people throw around like, oh, I have a community or I host events. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's ever evolving. It's way harder than people think it is to create something that's like cohesive and continues to survive. In my experience, it's really where people continue to show up and recognize one another. Is like what my experience has been with it. Is that so? In over the last like I think it's been like 3 or 4 years now of bringing people together, you begin to see the same faces, and people walk in the door and they see other familiar faces that they know and connect with. And this doesn't have to be in person. Mine happens to be in person, other than obviously the podcast show. So like my only experience and knowledge of like what it actually looks like to build a community is purely the in person. And that's been my experience with it, is like people show up, you know one another, you've had prior engagements, and so like there's this sense of friendliness that's already baked into people showing up. How you do that online, I can only imagine is 1,000 times harder. And to be honest, like I've put out feelers on how to do that online with my own community, of offering, whether it's like a Facebook group or a Slack group or a circle or name your thing. We could go down that rabbit hole and how they all have their own challenges. I think building an online community is incredibly hard. I think it had its season during COVID when everybody had to be online, but doing it in person, for me anyways, has been way easier. And luckily I live in a city where it is, to be honest, like not that hard to build community in a town like this. I'd imagine it's much harder in like Bodunk, Alabama or something of the sort. So I wouldn't give the same recommendation and experience of like what I've done. I wouldn't recommend it to a lot of other people. But if you are in an area that is friendly to that, maybe like a Denver or maybe even like a Miami or something of that sort, or definitely San Francisco, like I think it can work, but it definitely isn't for every city and every person. So yeah.
I'm similarly humbled, Corey. I'm here in West Virginia visiting a friend of mine. Short story, there's a run store right across from his place. And I said to him, why don't we go over and see if there's a run club? Because that's like a great place to meet people. And I go over to the store. They gave me this long story about how they can never figure the time out and people just don't meet up and all this stuff. I'm like, even as ambitious as I am and how many things I've pulled together. I mean, Shawn can tell you, I was just in Phoenix a month ago and we just turned it into this whole thing. Like it was days and days of sporadic events of all this stuff, but it's really hard in different areas. So I was humbled. So I had the same experience where you have to have a community of people that are also willing to show up too.
Yeah. If I to be honest, like, I mean, I sort of did try to do it in Minnesota when I lived there, and it just didn't have its same effect. It isn't as open, friendly. There's not as many like quote unquote random people there. There's not as much of a melting pot there. It's very like you grew up in a town with a city with a group of people. This is your friend group, and you essentially are going to die with this friend group. Obviously, there's exceptions in every city, and obviously, I'm not trying to talk anybody out of doing it, because there will always be other people that want that same level of friendliness and connection with new people. But there are degrees of difficulty to the game, I guess you could say.
Love
Yeah.
that.
So something I noticed, Corey, is that you're across all of your content, everything, and I think I've mentioned this to you. You've told me some of the trick behind it, or not the trick, but again, you're sort of like you're living it. It's authentic. Everything you're doing was kind of figured out along the way, built from pain. Like it makes sense. You have this way of taking your personalized images and pictures of you, like whether it's like holding a baby goat, I think you had something recently, and then making it a way to tell a very lovable, authentic story of you. And also give also just this draw, like I feel personally drawn to the content. Was that also instinctive or strategic? And has that impacted your growth and your audience loyalty by having more of an authentic presence like that?
It didn't start that way, but it's grown to exactly what you're talking about. And I appreciate you noticing the goat. It was actually, I was for Easter out on my friend's farm, and they just had I think they're called kids. I think baby goats are called kids. They had a slew of kids. But anyways, yeah, it didn't start that way. It didn't start that way until I learned this concept of understanding your blueprint. So in today's world, like almost everything, for better or for worse, is commoditized or being commoditized. And so the best way to stand out for every person on this planet, whether you're trying to get a job or start a business or build a community or whatever your ambitions are, is to understand your literal fingerprint and to express that is authentically as humanly possible. And I recognize that that word authenticity is very cliche, but it is at the end of the day the ultimate differentiator in today's market, where everything is being commoditized. No matter what your service is that you offer or your product is that you sell, you have to find the uniqueness. And the easiest way to do it, and again, this is just like me from learning from experience, is to just like figure out the things that I already do on a day-to-day life basis. And whatever that combination of things, like for me, it's a little bit of weight training and running, and I love to spend time alone and go on walks in nature, and I spend a good amount of time on the farm with the chickens and the goats and the longhorn, and there's a degree of like my love for marketing and website and design, and like all these things coming together is essentially my blueprint or my thumbprint. And just expressing that in an interesting way and telling stories around it and hopefully providing some sort of insights from my personal life experience has been by far the best way for me to just build, again, cliche statement, personal brand. And the cool thing is like anybody can do it. The bad thing is that it's really hard to figure that out. And I think it just takes a lot of just like putting yourself out there and taking stupid photos with goats to figure out like, okay, for some reason this clicks with people. Why does it click? And hopefully having some sort of usefulness to it. I hope you picked up on the fact of like, yes, there's a degree of like, 2 weeks ago, I went to a barbecue spot with my girlfriend and we sat in line for 2 hours and I wrote about like how having scarcity is a really good marketing tactic and people found that super useful. And so it's like, hopefully there's some degree of usefulness to it. It's not just literally me like trying to get entertainment for entertainment's sake. I want there to be a value add because that creates an association with me and my brand, is that when somebody checks out my post for whatever reason, something useful comes from it. That's the association I want people to build around it. And so like, yeah, it didn't start that way. It started out as like generic content about marketing things and things related to community building and things related to podcasting. But it's like, you can go to ChatGPT and you can Google and you can figure those things out. Like I don't need Corey or anybody else for that matter to tell me those things. But if I put whatever reason my experience on it, now there's this like subtle twist of uniqueness. It's almost like the snowflake, or like I said, the fingerprint. It gives it that subtle sense of like identity to it that makes it for some reason interesting.
Awesome. Yeah, love that. Okay, jumping into like the growth of the community itself. So obviously we all start somewhere. Community could start with, or the first event could start with 5 people, right? And that's likely what happened. I know that's, what happened for me. And now you've gotten it to a certain level. And so what sort of like systems or things or routines that you're doing on a weekly, daily basis to continue to grow and scale the community and just bring more awareness to it?
5 people, bro. You got me beat. I think I had a whole fat big old 0. So kudos to you. And I say that to just give people a sense of like, there were literal days where like nobody showed up, like not exaggerated. And I don't think that's unusual, to be honest, unless for some reason you've already built up an audience or you're partnering with somebody that already has an audience. Like if that is your scenario, awesome. Lean into that. If it's not your scenario, don't be surprised if it's you and your best friend and your best friend's cat. Like it's not that odd. And so I would say some of the lessons I've learned. So just to give people context too, most of the things I've learned are from the giants before me. So like everything I've learned are from other people that have trial, error, and failed in a lot of ways. A mutual friend of ours, Nick Gray, is one of those huge influences on my life, and he's incredible at community building, and a lot of things I've learned from him. And then other books as well of people that I've learned. And I would say before anything, the most important thing that I tell people, and I've written multiple posts about this and talked to other people that want to build community, is everything starts with purpose. Is why are you bringing people together here today? Is because when people hear community, their first brain goes to like, I want this massive group of people for X reason because it would be amazing. Nobody cares. First of all, you probably don't even need a lot of people. Second of all, why do you even want a lot of people in the first place? And third of all, like, what are you hoping to create with that? And so it's understanding the purpose, because the purpose of a community, quote unquote, could literally be your 4 friends that get together once a month for a non-alcoholic beer night to discuss the previous month's challenges with your wife. That's a perfectly good reason. I don't think there's any bad reason or any bad purpose to start a community, but I think getting clear on it from the beginning is really important, because all future decisions you make about that community stem from the purpose of the community. If the purpose of the community is to come together with your 4 friend groups to drink non-alcoholic beers and complain about your wives, then like you're probably not going to invite a bunch of people to this. Like that's probably not the kind of community that you want to build.
Yeah.
However, if you have more business or ambitious goals around building your community, clearly that's going to be a little bit different. And so some of the things that I've done from, I guess, a tactical standpoint over the past like 3 or 4 years of building community, one of the really heavy lifting items is having a consistent cadence. Has been huge for my community. Is that when it was the first Thursday of every month was how it started. Actually, it's technically started weekly, but I realized that was way overwhelming for an introvert like me, and I couldn't handle it. So then it turned into once a month, every first Thursday. So when the first Thursday came around, I would get messages from people of like, hey, when and where is the event happening? It was always the same time. It was always the same cadence. So it kind of like a TV show is like, it just created a consistent cadence. Well, not anymore because of Netflix, but like it created a consistent cadence of when and where I should show up for this community, which just like permanently imprinted it in their mind. Another thing that I did was at the end of every single event, I made sure I knew when the next event was, because at the end of the night, energy is high, people are excited, and they're like, oh my God, I want to do this again. And it's like, okay, awesome. By the way, here's the next date and time. Here's the link to sign up and register for it because you're so excited about this last one that you got to attend. Here's already the next one that's coming up. And then they sign up for it, and then they're on your email list, or they've already RSVP'd. And so there's a bit of pot commitment to it that comes from like riding that initial excitement from the event that you just hosted. And then the third thing I would say is like, and this is true for every business across the history of businesses or community ever, is like grow your list. Like my email list now is, I don't know, 1,000 something. I have no idea what it is at this point. But like essentially I was very intentional about growing that from day one. I honestly, to be honest, I had no idea what I was going to do with it. I had no idea how I was going to use it. I just knew that I was going to need a list in some way, shape, or form. And I would argue that the email list drives the majority of like future signups and scheduling and staying in contact. I've never spammed. I've never offered my services. I've never done anything from standpoint. I've never taken advertisement. These are all personal decisions that I made. I'm not saying that that's the right way to do it, but I grew it from day one, and I've only ever used it to invite them to follow-up events, and my unsubscribe rate is like 0.01% or something like that, because I've never damaged it. So yeah.
Yeah, and I can say over the years, I run the Austin Connections group with Drew and Weston, and we've ran into the same thing too, Corey, where we only use the list to promote the events. We do sell sponsorships, but there are specific terms around there. But we've never sold the list, and it frankly is really the biggest driver for us when we have like a quarterly party or something like that. It's the emails that drive attendance, even though Luma, Eventbrite, and Meetup.com are really great platforms. I mean, any one of them could go away or run out of favor. So I think Shawn uses a combination of Substack and Luma, I believe.
Yeah,
I've been so impressed with Luma
I
in
love
terms
it.
of like the platform, their ability to actually get some organic reach. Like I've been very impressed with that platform, to be honest, for
Yeah,
anybody building communities.
yeah. I'm a big advocate.
And one quick thing I wanted to say, Corey, that you said at the very beginning of the answer to Shawn, which was really good, is about first of all having like goose egg, having no one at events. I've been there so many times, especially because even in college, this kind of like sparked something in me to do. This all started in college, like me. They call them Devin and Ambron mixers. I would just get random people together that I met in college. It would be like people from the law school, people from the medical school, and all different in between. But most of the time, like you're saying, it's really interesting that people sort of expect there to be this pop or this aha moment, but it's really just like the first 6 months of creating a community probably is going to suck a little bit, and you're going to be questioning it. And so I really just admire that you have the looking at it retrospectively and saying like, here's exactly what it was. Because if, and we can end on this as like a final, but you answered some of this, but do you think that building community is important, and how has it made an impact for you? Like what did all of this work do for you besides just business? Like it can be deeper than that also.
Yeah, it's the non-tangibles. It's like I know that's maybe like a crappy answer, but back to Nick Gray and conversations we've had about building communities and like why we do it and what's been the biggest value out of it and like should anybody else do it. And I can say without question, like the biggest value for me has literally been the intangibles. Like if you go into it with this idea of I want to build a community because like it's going to help drive my business or my revenue or just whatever your reasons are. To be honest, like there's so many intangibles that are going to come from it, from rather like connections that you didn't expect to make, or even the content that comes from it. Like if you take a photo with a group of people and somebody sees that and they're like, oh my gosh, like this person must be like cool or interesting or fun or whatever label you want to put around it. And like just like the degrees of network that expand outward from it. And then you connect so and so, and then they come back to you a year later and they're like, oh my God, we met because of Devin, or we met because of Shawn, and like now we have this business together. And it's like there's just so many intangibles that like you can never put your pulse on like what it is. But I can say without question, they've all been amazing. Like even the most recent one, I guess just to wrap on this, is a doctor, an MD, who he's been attending them from like quote unquote OG days, whatever, 2-3 years ago when I first started it. And just this last one that we hosted, he came up to me after the event and he goes, you and your community is the reason that I decided to start my own practice and start my own business. And like, he's like happier than he's ever been. And I was like, dude, like that's awesome. And this was years in the making. Like, I don't freaking know, man. Like I'm just like bringing interesting people together that I want to hang out with. Like, I don't know. So there's just so many intangibles. It's just so hard to say.
I can relate to that on so many levels, man. Like just the pure relationships and friendships that come out of it is almost worth it in itself, right? Even if it doesn't drive you any sort of business. Like I don't have anything to sell, and it's still been a life-changing thing. So love that. Where can people find you, man? Really appreciate you doing this. So where can people find your community? Honestly, a little bit about your business too would be cool. Yeah, where can people find you?
Yeah, everything's on my website, coreyhigh.com. If I'm obnoxiously active on LinkedIn, so if you use that platform, I post every single day, almost annoyingly. So I got to be the only person on there posting every day. I swear to God, nobody uses that platform.
No, Devin and I are definitely posting every day.
Yeah, well, I gotta say, Corey, though, you're like top of my feed. Like I said, it's doing a good job, so you're doing awesome.
What's funny about that platform though is like it's so demoralizing because like I know here's what it is. I know people see it because like I was at the gym the other day and a guy came up to me. He's never liked comments ever. He's like, "Hey, been following you on LinkedIn. Love so and so post." No idea this guy follows me, but I get stuff like that. I get stuff like that all the time. So what's so funny about that platform is like I know there's a lot of people on there, but nobody. It's like nobody engages, nobody likes, nobody comments, nobody does anything on that platform. They just watch. It is like the ultimate lurker's paradise on that platform. I swear to God.
So true. Yeah, but, apparently 1%, not to interrupt you, but I think 1% of the users on LinkedIn are actively using the platform other than just, like you said, scrolling and just seeing people's updates of like, oh, started this job and all that stuff.
So for anybody that like is sick of Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, whatever your thing is like go there because you have no competition.
100%. 100%.
Biggest sound, yeah.
And,
awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's I was gonna say. Like if you're on there, hit me up and comment on my stuff. But other than that,
we won't lurk. We promise.
Yeah. We'll engage. Corey, thanks so much, man. This was fun.
Cool. Appreciate it, guys.